Xiaomi recently introduced a whole lineup of smartphones in the Redmi family of devices, and here in Malaysia we have the Redmi Note 10 and also the Redmi Note 10 Pro. I initially planned to do two separate reviews, one for each phone because they are different phones anyway, but then eventually I realized they're both very similar to each other, but there are a few key distinctions between both of them. So in today's video, let's speed run through all of the differences of these two smartphones and also go through our 6 important points of a smartphone. Let's go! So I think the best way is we'll start off with the design, and as you can see here, both the Redmi Note 10 and the Redmi Note 10 Pro comes in more or less the same design, honestly speaking. They both have similar shape and size, but the Redmi Note 10 is slightly thicker but narrower, whereas the Redmi Note 10 Pro is thinner but a bit wider. It's surely subtle, but once I hold it in my hands, I can immediately feel the differences in size and shape between these two phones. And both of these phones also come with the same design language overall, and since we have it in front of us, we can see that they are also using the same colors, and they pretty much look identical actually. They are both using glossy plastic backs, and the main distinction between these two phones is the word Ultra Premium at the camera cutout. As you can see here, the Redmi Note 10 has the word Ultra Premium sticking together quite closely, whereby the Redmi Note 10 Pro has the word Ultra and Premium separated by quite a wide gap. Now to me, the gap between the words Ultra and Premium looks like a perfect place to fit in a laser autofocusing system, because it does have that appropriate size of a black strip there and also a red dot. Turns out there's no sensors there, it's just a black piece of nothing. And also the words Ultra Premium here is just very tacky. And while we are here, let's talk about the cameras of these two phones right here. And we'll start off with just running through the specs. Both of these phones have a total of 4 different cameras, but only 3 of them are usable to take pictures. Seriously though, depth sensors shouldn't be a thing anymore. And starting off, we'll just focus on the Redmi Note 10 first, and the main camera here can take some overall good looking pictures. The ultra wide angle camera is pretty noisy even though it's in broad daylight, and the macro camera, well, I wouldn't advise you to use it that much because it's only 2 megapixels and also it doesn't have autofocus, so it's really difficult to take macro shots with the Redmi Note 10. But as for the Redmi Note 10 Pro, it obviously has better cameras, and the main camera takes brighter pictures overall and has a little bit more contrast, but it also crushes the blacks a lot more. But the ultra wide angle camera is the same as the Redmi Note 10, so it's also noisy in broad daylight. But the main distinction that I really like the most here is the macro camera. Now the Redmi Note 10 Pro, I think it comes with the same macro camera and lens as the Mi 11 because it also has autofocusing and it is in 5 megapixels. So you can take some amazing macro shots with the Redmi Note 10 Pro. And now comes the screen. They are both using Super AMOLED screens, while the local announcement only mentioned that it's AMOLED. Xiaomi did clarify that indeed they are all using Super AMOLED screens, it's just they're calling it differently. And the differences between these screens though, well, the Redmi Note 10 comes with a 6.43-inch screen and it only runs at 60Hz, whereby the Redmi Note 10 Pro is at a slightly bigger 6.67-inch running at up to 120Hz. They are both also in 1080p in resolution. Now to me, both of them look fine, the colors are good, and also it's bright enough to be used in broad daylight as well. And for the specs, the Redmi Note 10 comes with a lower mid-range kind of specs, and it only comes with Snapdragon 678 with 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage, whereby the Redmi Note 10 Pro, to drive that 120Hz refresh rate screen, it comes with a Snapdragon 732G with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. And if you want to know how these two phones perform individually, well, we also have 2 separate videos of its gaming performance, one for the Redmi Note 10, another one for the Redmi Note 10 Pro, which you can check it out at the top right corner there. Honestly speaking, the Redmi Note 10 is definitely not powerful enough to handle most of the games, so if you're looking just to play games, don't get the Redmi Note 10. The Redmi Note 10 Pro though, it can handle games quite decently. And now for the battery, they both come with 5000 mAh battery, but because of its different in specs, the battery life is heavily affected. So at about the same brightness, I ran PC Mark 10 battery life tests on both of these phones, twice for the Redmi Note 10 Pro because it is running at 60Hz and also 120Hz separately. We did those tests as well. So from what we know, the Redmi Note 10 is definitely a champion in terms of battery life because it is only at 60Hz and it's also using a relatively low powered chipset. But for the Redmi Note 10 Pro, it lasts slightly less than the Redmi Note 10 at 60Hz, but once it goes up to 120Hz, the battery life takes a big dip. Now for the charging time, both of them are using the exact same 33 watts charger, proprietary of course, and they are both also using a same 5000 mAh battery. So the charging time is more or less the same. So yeah. So for the software side of things, I'm not gonna talk much about it here because they are both running on Android 11 with MIUI 12 on top, and the overall user experience is the same as any other phones running MIUI 12. So if you want to check that out, watch our review of the Mi 11 instead because we talk about MIUI 12 a lot more on that phone. So after speed running through all of the 6 different aspects of these two smartphones, here's what I have to say. The Redmi Note 10 starts at 799 ringgit, and the most notable feature here is only the AMOLED screen. And especially with that chipset, well, this phone is kind of weird because if AMOLED screen is something that you must have, then yes, the Redmi Note 10 is a good choice. But if you want a more balanced performance with its chipset and also 120Hz refresh rate, I think you should get the Poco X3 NFC instead. But that phone comes with an IPS LCD screen, so it kind of really depends on what you need on a phone. But if you want an even more balanced experience in terms of gaming, performance, photography, all of those stuff, and also 120Hz AMOLED screen, then the Redmi Note 10 Pro is obviously the choice for you, and it is only starting at 999 ringgit. Now, I know that the Poco X3 Pro was just announced with a lot more powerful chipset. Well, here's what I have to say though. This phone also comes with an IPS LCD screen, and the cameras is definitely not as good as the Redmi Note 10 Pro. So again, at the end of the day, I can't decide for you what phone you should buy, and I can't recommend you to get one over the other. It truly depends on what you need. So with all of those information laid out here, AMOLED screen at the lowest price, Redmi Note 10. But if you want a more balanced performance and also 120Hz AMOLED screen, Redmi Note 10 Pro. If you want just pure performance at the lowest price, Poco X3 Pro. This review for the phone here is gonna come soon, so stay subscribed because yeah, this phone is gonna be interesting. So that's it. That's all we have to say about these two phones right here, and we'll see you guys in the next video. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section below. We'll see you next time.